level and at macro level also GDP is going to suffer a
हेलो
lot in
1
the
2
coming
3
decade.
4 5 6
Uh,
7 8 चेक
but
चेक नमस्कार आप
good
सबका
part is
स्वागत है
that a lot of
शिफा होटल
international
फाइनेंशियल
agencies
समिट में
and national agencies, governments, CSRs, and private sector equally are contributing towards positive development in the climate finance and climate resilience measures. To discuss this further, may I request, I would like to welcome our distinguished panel led by our moderator, Mr. Dibyajyoti Patnaik, Director, Annapurna Finance, on stage, please. In fact, Mr. Dibyajyoti's organization, Annapurna Finance, is partner to this particular session. I also welcome other panel members, Mr. Ravindra Kumar Singh, Chief General Manager, Small Industries Development Bank of India, Mr. Jaskirat S. Chadda, Head Finance Institutions Debt Responsibility, Diane Jegam, Regional Director for Parco, please, and Mr. Abhishek Agarwal, Managing Partner, Action Impact Management. A big round of applause for our panel members. Now I hand it over to Mr. Dibyajyoti, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this post-lunch session, all the attendees and the panelists. We have the panelists, two of the panelists that originally we have planned were dropped due to some emergencies. This subject that we are talking about is on climate adaptation and resilience at the bottom of the pyramid, which while are not producing or are not responsible for that much of the problem, but are also impacted majorly in that direction. And with the impact which we are getting into is uncertain, and the challenge, the impact and the challenge that are ahead of us, we as a whole human, civilization is getting into is unpredictable now, with more and more, dangerous trends coming up. We thought that let's discuss how do we create both the financial institutions which are working at the bottom of the pyramid, resilient of this kind of shocks, and also the clients, because at the end of the day, if the clients are not ready or the products are not ready which can minimize these changes or damages happening because of the climate change, how do we then manage the risks around it? So I would like to thank again the whole panel for joining us and all the audience here. So I'll just start to give you a small brief around, and so let's start the PPT. So here we have a questionnaire which the question is, what should be the magnitude of the contribution of finance institutions to make the economy climate resilient? There is a QR code available. You can the people who are here can vote or give their opinion. You can scan the QR code on this slide, and then we'll produce the result. Post the so we are going with high, then moderate. So 67%, now it is 60. Moderate is 40, now high. Streamline own policies is also now coming with 20%. So 40% streamlining own policies and processes, 45 now. Moderate own green portfolio is 8% now. Keep voting, please keep voting. This will give us a good indication for us to take it forward, the discussion. So please keep voting. Very high. Established collaborative model to advance industry towards climate resilience is 56%. And 39%, 35, 50, 35, 10 and 5 now. So still the number one is collaborative model to advance industry towards climate resilience finance. %. Okay, so we have two critical streamlining own policies process along with offering in product and collaborative to advance industry towards climate resilience. These are the two which are now kind of trending, and the leading is obviously establishing collaborative model to advance industry towards climate resilience finance. So 43% of the audience thinks that we should have a collaborative model, and then 32% of the audience thinks that streaming own policies and processes along with offering green product could be a solution to the challenge that we are all facing. Okay, can we move to the next slide? Thank you all for participating. So let's understand we all know that how big the climate change and the risks involved in it. But let's understand some number, The world economy can be lose close to 10% of the total economic value if current situation persists and the Paris Agreement and 2015 Net Zero Agreement not met, which is basically what it is impacting the physical risk from the climate change and the transitional risk, resulting of this climate change. So this is, and it is worldwide, across the globe it is happening. It is happening in, and India also. So, let's see what is happening in India around the climate change. So how extremes we are getting into. The temperature is projected to increase by 4.4 centigrade. We took almost, a temperature rise from 1.06 to 1.75 from 1874 to 2004. But in last 20 years, we have increased it to 3.3 per year. The perception the precipitation for June and September in India came down to 6%. So what is happening around this? Assam, Andhra and Maharashtra as the more vulnerable states. What is happening around because of this climate change? It is directly impacting the livelihood of millions of people that we serve, and it is so because it is impacting the agriculture, it is impacting the livestock the most. So that is the challenge that we are facing. The macroeconomic impact of climate change is the physical risk of climate change affecting the agriculture the most. Extreme weather event causing supply stock further reduce to the economy's aggregate output and rise prices. Change in demand condition affecting the supply potential. The high contributing sector of the country's GVA, like manufacturing, transportation, mining, electricity, are vulnerable to the transitional risk. So India's poorest suffer the most as the climate change destroys livelihood and versus the communities. So the frequency of flood, the frequency of flash floods, cyclones, the heat waves, these are all impacting the bottom of the pyramid the most. The climate change, so some of the numbers just to tell you how it is impacting our livelihood is that the reduction in the kharif rice farming, the reduction in different agriculture output, it's substantial. 8%, 10 to 35%. This is hugely impacting. This whole will impact our entire food production. This all is impacting our dairy production, everything. For example, the temperature increase will reduce 25% production and 10% respectively in the agri and semi-agrid areas. The whole ecosystem is not only agriculture, it is also impacting the livestock massively. So that is also one change that which is happening. The SMEs, which largely employ the majority of the population, they are also going through this transitional risk of the climate change. So whether they will need to be prepared. The agriculture productivity and rising cereal price may increase India's national poverty rate by 3.5% by 2040 if this scenario continues to grow. Some of the climate change risk as a financial sector is the credit risk. Obviously, the livelihood is impacted, and the change in the market, the vulnerability around the market is the market risk. Then we have all operational risk because of the frequency of these events. And you caught up with the clients. COVID is one of the example. Then the liquidity risk, and then so these all the risks that we as in financial institutions are vulnerable to or open to vulnerability. The CGAP Global Climate Resilience Finance Product scan, we have try and understand the climate responsive products and index insurance. Climate responsive products are offered by MFIs and insurance companies. 50% only from the insurance companies. 76% of bundled climate response products are combined, one financial and one non-financial product. Climate responsive products are designed for multiple parties. So what we are trying to understand is how the financial institutions are responding to this. Are these products bundled? Are these products standalone? Are enough insurance products available? Are enough financial product available? Are the features in the financial products are opt for it? So product development is one of the critical elements, and we're going to talk about that with the panel and try and understand that. And then the target refocus, the whole ASEAN context that we are talking about. Some of the challenges, the majority of the population is smallholder of farmers and micro entrepreneurs, dependent on traditional livelihood method and conventional resource and infrastructure. Transition to green alternative often claim high capital investments and low productivity in the initial year of adoption. Lack of preparedness to tackle livelihood and household losses from the extreme climate event. Limited awareness and adaptive capacity for climate change and inducted weather pattern. Small income impacting the repayment capacity, highly in case of extreme climate events. And low affordability creates a need to higher flexibility in climate resilience. So these are some challenges that as a financial institution we are facing, and then as a customer of this our institutions are facing. So we, in terms of FIs, I've already spoken to you. Though we do not have a product diversification, we do not have a product design available. The credit guarantee schemes are inefficient or are inadequate to response to this kind of a product line. And so a lot of this clarity is required for the financial institution to cross over, to prepare itself for the adoption, initial adoption blocks which are available to us as a challenge. So I'll leave it here. I'll just go to the panel now, and and then we'll take these questions of challenges both from the financial institution point of view and from the client point of view, and see what are the you know so I'll start with RK Singh, sir. Sir, where does the regular Indian population stands on the topic of climate resilience today? And what sector or geography specific insights can be drawn about their financial needs to prevent the climate vulnerability?
So as far as the population understanding is concerned, we find particularly in MSME domain, we come out with the SPECS index, which is Sustainability Perception Index. Basically here we are tracking that what is the awareness level of SMEs, MSMEs particularly, to the sustainability and the climate aspects. And how are they oriented or preparing themselves to gear up to these aspects. And what we find is that while there is in the entire ladder, micro, small and medium, the micro and medium are getting more aware because they are, in fact, the micro is getting most impacted because of the vulnerability of the entire fragile, say, ecosystem we have. We have a big, it's a long coastline, then we have mountains out there, glaciers, anytime floods are coming. So that way, 1 out of 3, we have found in the latest assessment, which we do quarterly, that MSMEs are aware that yes, there is a climate risk out there, but are not prepared in sense of they lack the technical expertise, as also they lack the capital access in a way, which really restricts them to this. But another aspect is that 2 out of 5 realize that if they don't cater to this sustainability inverted, they have a challenge of retaining clients or retaining business. So from that perspective, I think climate risk is sector agnostic per se. A few days back, we were discussing with one of the insurers, and they told that due to an unnatural flood in a particular area, in fact state, they ended up compensating people with 1,000 crores. So that sort of claim, and those who were not insured really had a problem. So the lenders who had not insured their clients, they also landed in problem. Another good figure which quite concerns the lender side is almost 56% of commercial lending in India is vulnerable to, the portfolio is vulnerable to climate risk. So that way, the geography-wise, and as a microfinance institution or institutions who are locally attending, I think they should be looking at these regional vulnerabilities, which I would say you cannot bracket it in one box. It tends to differ because things keep on getting impacted. The way Ministry of Earth Sciences have brought in a research report that if we see next 50 years, India will see rise of 2-degree temperature. There may be 25 to 30 centimeter sea level will go up, and 3 to 4 times heat waves. And it may come that the center and the north may face the drought, whereas south may face floods, unnatural, right? So we need to look at these aspects whenever we are customizing. So awareness level needs to be embedded whenever we are trying to have a catchment as a business from a lending institution perspective.
Thank you, sir. I'll go to the Diana to take a different perspective. What can be different support mechanism from DFIs to strengthen the FI's capability to design efficient climate resilience finance products line for the sector like agriculture and allied activities and MSMEs?
we take the example of the agriculture sector, just to want to enhance why this sector is interesting for DFIs, I think the agriculture sector can be the major vector for sustainable development. Moreover, in countries like India, where a huge percentage of population working in rural areas for the agriculture sector, we are tackling many topics like food security, poverty alleviation, job creation. And if we really tackle this challenge properly, we are also talking about inclusion of smallholder farmers, including women, resilience to climate change, and all the environmental issues. So for DFIs, the agriculture sector is something very important today. And if you look at our strategy in India, agriculture, adaptation, mitigation, and resilience is something has a big pillar on what we are doing. So what kind of product that we can offer? Today, I was digging a bit when preparing my notes today. I just note that adaptation to climate change only accounts 7% basically of total climate finance. This is a very small portion because it is still looked as very risky. Private sector should not handle the climate adaptation topics because it is risky, and it should be done by the government and the public sector. But I think today the reality is completely different, and we need more and more climate finance into adaptation. What DFIs can do for that, I think that we have some very traditional tools that everyone knows, which is long-term loans, guarantee programs, equity, quasi-equity, technical assistance. But I think today to tackle really the adaptation topic and the agriculture, we need to innovate also as a DFI. And clearly today we need to put more de-risking tool in order to do more investment into the agriculture sector, and more specifically on adaptation, clearly. We have at Proparco one interesting technical assistance called Propulse framework. Basically, this is a technical assistance which is dedicated for financial institution in order to help the financial institution to understand what is climate change risk, basically. Today, we are doing very classic financing of, we are financing climate project, renewable energy project, EV project. I think today we need to look further, one step further, and to assess the climate risk. And how to assess the climate risk, this technical framework will help the financial institution in order to understand what is climate risk and how we can evaluate this climate risk, and how I can embed it in my strategy, basically. I think this is the first point towards the FIs, to the response that we can give to the microfinance institution and the financial institution and the banks. And then, in order to push those institutions to do more in the front of resilience and adaptation, we can't simply propose very classic tools. We need somehow to put some technical assistance to help them to understand, and some de-risking tool in order to push them to take this risk. And to push them to take this risk, we have to somehow blend the credit lines that we can put in place.
Okay. Thank you. So just now that we have spoke about our app, we have the understanding of the risk. Now we also have funding available for the risk. Now how do you monitor the effectiveness of these climate resilience products in implementing this to reduce the vulnerability of the target population at the bottom of the pyramid?
Thanks. I'll just take a step back and talk about what Responsibility has been doing the last 10 years on climate risk mitigation. So we manage the Global Climate Partnership Fund, which is, since 2009, focused on climate risk mitigation from the perspective of reducing carbon and from the perspective of improving energy efficiency. 15 years since the launch of this fund, it's very clear that climate change is a huge problem we all have, and the fund recently expanded the scope of its investments into climate adaptation. And that's a strategy which we will be rolling out in the next couple of years. It's still at its infancy, and we were working on developing a tool to help financial institutions identify climate risk vulnerabilities for each of their loans which they give. So that's the starting point of how do financial institutions really identify the risk. Identifying monitoring of KPIs is the next step, but really I think that's the starting point what Dr. R.K. Singh spoke about is, do we really understand the risks which are taken? And is there sufficient willingness for the bank or the borrower to pay to mitigate that risk? And I think that's a very important element here where I think insurance companies have to play a big role in accurately predicting outcomes and pricing the insurance product appropriately. I'll talk about that subsequently, but talking about what KPIs can be possible. So let's talk about bottom of the pyramid customers. So they're predominantly linked to agri-value chains. So I guess that is the starting point, and that is the most susceptible to climate change. And stuff like as simple as improving soil moisture by mulching, by water harvesting, by not tilling the land, are very simple techniques which farmers can adopt to just reduce the amount of reliance they have to the rains. So that's one way where we can just develop KPIs on products which financial institutions offer to farmers as a measure of how they mitigate themselves. Then there, of course, there's the standard water harvesting, there is drip irrigation. These are already established practices which exist. So I think that you can create several products around climate adaptation which farmers can implement. But I think it's really important that farmers implement these strategies. And I think that's the most important point here. And it has to be of cost of delivery of the product and willingness of them to pay for it. And I think that's really where I think we need a lot more collaboration. And I think that's your next question here. How do we get the best outcome to mitigate the climate risks that our farmers face?
Just to follow up on that, is there any international standard available for us to follow?
On climate adaptation, I would not be aware. I can imagine this is a very evolving topic. And from the perspective of when we looked at, for instance, carbon mitigation, right? There was no standard. We just said, hey, any project which lowers carbon emission by 20% or improves energy efficiency by 20% is a bar which we should aspire for. So all the funding which GCPF has offered over the last 12, 13 years has been to financial institutions to projects where we've assessed reduction in carbon of the asset which has been funded. I think a similar approach has to be created. We're in the process, as I mentioned, of developing those tools, but it's still a bit too early for us to really talk about an international standard. And I think this is a moving target because unlike carbon is very measurable. Yeah. Climate adaptation is something which is very difficult to measure because you're talking about, for instance, housing. You could talk about housing design. You can talk about soil moisture content. You can talk about how industrial effluents are treated. So I think it has to be a much more decentralized approach, which is where I think MFIs play a very big role in sort of bridging the gap between what the ground realities are and what products financial institutions can offer.
Thank you. Abhishek, I'll come to you now. That we were institutions which are mostly into financial inclusion, and now we are also talking about climate resilience. Do you think that we should these two things should come together? And what kind of product innovation then you are looking forward to, in order to reduce the climate challenge that ultimately the borrowers are going to face?
No, thank you very much, DJ, for that great question. And I'm glad to see the participation here in this room because that means this topic matters to us. And I'm just going to take a little bit of a back step from the question what you asked. I'm going to come over there. But I think the biggest problem in the civil society today with the 1.3 billion population is for us, we are still living in a denial mode. We think that this problem is not ours, somebody else will look at it and will solve it. And I think given the brains which are sitting here with the power which we carry to make that impact and effect, I think we all need to start thinking collectively that this climate change is a monster is standing in front of us. I think Mr. Singh just talked about that in few years, which is the data what we see, 2050, the 2% change in climate, 2 degrees Celsius change in climate is going to impact the water level by 25 to 35 centimeters. And that means the coastal cities of India would be significantly underwater. What are we doing? In fact, from a Mumbai perspective, I keep on hearing that by 2050, Mumbai can be very well below the water by a meter. But what I'm seeing in Mumbai, probably nothing. So I really want to put up this stark reality, which we still continue to be in denial mode, that this is not my problem, this is somebody else's problem. So I'm glad to see that this panel being put together and all of you are participating. Because as we go back home, as we start to go back in our institution, which is what the question you have asked, DJ, that how do we look at combining it with the financial inclusion and climate change? This is really a real problem. Now, why financial inclusion? I come from Axion. Axion is a 60-year-old organization working in the financial inclusion space in the number of countries, and we have been fostering the financial inclusion. But we see this is a reality that every climate change is becoming a severe problem from the most vulnerable population segment. Every time there is a drought or there is a cyclone coming, who is getting the most affected? Is the end client, end borrower. What happens for them? They are under significant debt, I think, which is what was even reflected on one of your slides from a credit risk perspective. And we are not ready as financing institution or as microfinance institution to offer them suitable products as and when these realities come and hit us. Whether we talk of north of India or we talk south of India, we would see more and more droughts, more and more cyclones, and more floods coming in. And in that situation, given how India, how the climates are evolving, I think gone are the days when we can continue to think about that having a solar rooftop product is a climate change product or a climate product, or having the carbon footprint reduction is another good climate product. We need to come out of these boxes and start thinking that on a day-to-day basis, how do I implement that when my client is going through the vulnerability, how I support them? How do I develop my product? How do I build the resilience in these clients so that they are more and more enabled? If a drought has happened or if a cyclone has happened, given the approach of the financing institutions, and microfinance institutions are very powerful. You have the connect with these customers. You have the outreach to the customers. And I know maybe I might be jumping the gun a little bit here, but look at the vulnerability of what happens today. The moment the drought or the cyclone has come, the client is not able to repay the installments. Their business is down. Now, what we would expect in those situations, how the relief can be provided. And we all know the economic empowerment is the most effective tool in these situations to be given to these customers. It's great to have those flood relief and other materials. And this is where I feel personally that from a financing institution, if in those moments of time, you are able to provide them the small credit, or if you are able to help them in developing the understanding towards, as Jaskirat mentioned, on the insurance side, our borrowers, micro borrowers do not pay the attention. And in fact, a lot of time, even the products have not evolved. On the insurance side, why can't we start collectively looking at it that how do we develop more and more climate resilient financial products and services, work with our clients so that they start to understand and undertake from a risk perspective, they are saving the money for some of these eventualities. They have bought the appropriate insurance products so that their vulnerability starts to go down. So DJ2, I think I'm partly covering this already as part of what I'm communicating here. But what I feel is that the financial inclusion and the climate resilience goes very hands in hand, and given where are we standing today as a society, it's even more important that we all realize that this is very much hands in hand. And if we will not have a realization of this, that then a time will come very soon, we will all be sitting on huge portfolio at defaults, not knowing what do we need to do with this. And then we will say the customer does not have enough economic ways and means to pay. But we had not thought enough where we start to build the resilience in our client, start to bring the stability in our client so that they are ready to pay. So I think financial inclusion, financial education and empowerment is more than important in order to start building the climate resilience so that their vulnerability towards it can start to come down.
Thank you, Abhishek. Singh sir, I'll come back to you on this. Following from what Abhishek left, so I have two fundamental questions. Are the product affordable to the client segment that we are serving? And how does that reach to them? What are we doing about it?
Okay, like when we started the session, there was a word used, suffer. So I was thinking whether suffer or buffer or surfer, what should be the strategy, right? So what we did when we started the green mission in SIDBI, and see MSME, and more so when we step down and cover this microfinance, the most crucial aspect is you should not bring all those technicalities and give to them and they really are scared of. Equally, it happens with the lender and appraisal officers who are appraising the cases. They should be brought at ease that nothing sort of rocket science is there. It's basically green financing or climate financing is more being conscious about environment and social aspects. And how do you embed this into entire lending means or risk measurement and assessment. So what we take a mantra in SIDBI is financing the green will not happen unless you green the financing. So we are working on embedding ESG itself in the entire lending process, and that is how SIDBI, we have strategy-wise, we have bracketed it into 4 levels. So the first is green tagged loans, which are not green loans. The second level is green loan, which filters through the ENS framework, Environment and Social Risk Framework, as also we measure the GHG emission reduction and energy saving, whatever comes through. And the third level is green MSME, where product process, the building itself goes green. And last is green clusters. We are working on all 4 levels at different way. But to strategize for the microfinance or micro enterprise per se, what we believe is it has to have a development court walking along. And that is what we implemented one project in Sundarbans, where the cyclone impacted Sundarbans. So immediately we thought what to do out here. So we attended the subsistence part. By bringing our CSR fund, we said, let us work on their rehabilitation in terms of house and other things, daily essential things can be given. Once they stood up, then we worked on their sustainability part, where that how do we embed the livelihood aspect and get them going. And the third level was, so we call this mission as subsistence to sustenance to Sanji, which is Sundarban Greens. So we brought their livelihood embedded with the green walkthrough. Now coming to, like you had mentioned about certain aspects that risk sharing, first loss is not happening. We have tested this for the last 7 years, and we provide this risk sharing facility, and I call it, this is like giving comfort to the lenders, and Mahuna, do it. So this way we have whatever 14 lenders we are providing risk sharing facility, the entire portfolio touchwood is intact, it's standard, because we don't do guarantee. We do the technical assessment of any case which comes up first. There is a technical team with us, which filters these in terms of bankability and viability. And then, as our colleagues were mentioning, that looks at the risk perspective in terms of climate-related risks which are there. Second is, what we have started doing is, in our, say, interest rate which we offer, the interest rate for those who are going for green investment is lower. So we induce them. And third is, we are also trying to embed, for example, for EV, what we are electrical vehicles, what we do is, if women is acquiring a EV, we reduce the risk premium. So these are things which we are trying to introduce into this. So SIDBI is working on 5 missions, which we call Panch Tattva. The first is solar, which, as you mentioned, we are working on that. How do you make each SME solar rooftop? So the way we have water tanks on our houses, we'll do the solar rooftop, and we have done a good way into that. The second is the EV, where it is aligned to our national agenda of by 2030, 30% vehicles should be EV way. Third, which is important, is circular economy. And so we have the internal technical expertise Unless you do that, and unless you build the value chain from the supply side, the banker should be trained. Today, we have trained 60% of SIDBI officers to assess green projects and green investments. And as on date, last 6 months, our retail loan, 65% is going green. So the idea was first remove this fear and bring them near to this agenda. And that is what is working. Another aspect is, like we have started adopting artisanal clusters, because everything will not be solved by financing product. It has to be walked along or quoted with a non-financial initiative. So for example, we work on a project GRIT, which is called Green Inclusivity. And here what we have done is we adopted, for example, Moradabad. There, 90% of the people who are engaged in brass artisan cluster, they have lungs problem. The family has lungs problem, right? And so we worked on transiting 100, to start with, 100 enterprises, household enterprises from coal-fired to gas-fired. We brought ESCOs, which are energy service companies, and told that, see, this is 5,000 artisans who are there, 100 I am going to bear for transition. And if you find a market into this, then I will fund you for the market capturing. So the idea was to bring the real players who can look at the market and be in the market later on when I leave out, right? And we supported through risk sharing facility. So similarly, we are working in 18 clusters. And we would be keen to look at some livelihood, some pocket, and like we are working in Odisha as well. So these are things that entire value chain, right from village to district to state level, SIDBI is looking at these aspects. Like we are working with 2 states to turn them green, and we are working along with them to weave entire ecosystem. And last but not the least is, we are working with IBA, and IBA has set up a working group, and SIDBI chairman chairs the working group, which is working on embedding ESG into the entire lending. And if it happens the way we are working on, it will also come down, because the story of green would be written by India and bottom up. So that is what we believe.
Thank you. Thank you. Singh, one additional question to that. The whole expertise that you have built, will that be accessible to the FI?
Oh yes, everything which SIDBI does is public and nation good, right? So, like for example, we have tested a digital process also of lending. So anybody can come in, log in and apply for a loan. Automatically, it will categorize them that he is eligible for a green loan. And there we have embedded 819 technologies, right, which are clean, green, energy efficient. We are, since we have tested it, we are ready to now shift to the entire ecosystem. So whole the front will be there.
Okay, thank you. So my next question to Dana is that any learning from other countries, that because you look at many countries apart from India, that have successful models around green financing?
First, I'm impressed by what SIDBI is doing. Is really a great example for DFIs to follow on all those things. Maybe before talking about other countries, let's talk about India, because we have great examples, right? We closed a few months ago a transaction with Sayadri Farms. I'm sure that everybody knows this farmer-producer company. And the equity investment has been brought by Incofin, Proparco, and FMO. The idea will be really to help the company to grow. It's a company owned by the farmers. The model is quite unique. And beside the financing that we have given to grow other crops and the other business lines, we have put in place a technical assistant in order to help Sayadri, in order to cope with the climate change, and in order to do a gap analysis to see how Sayadri, how the grapes, how the tomato will react in 5, 10, 15 years based on the climate risk assessment that has been done. So this technical assistant is ongoing, and one of the big output of the technical assistance will be to see the result and to see how we can adapt and how we can put in place some very specific financing towards Sayadri. So these are the one great example that we can have in India, and Proparco will be really happy to look more into this kind of model. In other parts of Africa, we have already blended finance which exists. So we are working with a lot of microfinance institutions in order to push these microfinance institutions to lend to the small older farmers, to those SME, in order to find out solutions. So we believe that in the agriculture sector, we need to tackle the adaptation solution for agriculture, but also the adaptation solution for the financial institution, right? For the agriculture, Proparco, thanks to a fund in Africa called AHAF Fund, the idea will be really to target all the small agri-tech companies who are really innovating in drought-tolerant crops research, agroforestry, or solar-powered water-efficient solution, cold chain storage. So these are the solutions that we are financing through our investment into funds. The other thing which is also very, very interesting, our mother company is also closely working with SIDBI on the topic which is much more broader, which how to green the financial institution. So here typically we are talking about the transition risk, the physical risk that will occur with the climate change, and how to prepare the banks in order to tackle this. So we are discussing with few banks on the climate parametric insurance, data analytics to better assess borrowers' repayment risk profiles, and also to identify this physical risk and associated risk. So much things are ongoing in other part of the country, but I think in India we are also very much pioneer in the framework, thanks to the work done by AFD with SIDBI, but also with all the agri-tech companies that we can see.
Can you also put a little bit of light on your financing program in Bangladesh, where you're directly financing the...
Yeah, thank you, Didi sir. So in Bangladesh, we have also a green portfolio. Basically, we are working a lot with the RMG sector. As you know, the textile sector is an important sector for this country. And the question can be, oh, wow, a DFI is financing a fast fashion company. No, that's not what we are doing. Anyway, with or without Proparco, fast fashion company will be there. The idea will be how to greener this. So all the loans that Proparco will provide to the corporates will be green loans and green capex. The idea will be really to push those corporates to finance more efficient, energy efficient machines in order to improve and increase their capacities.
Yeah, thank you. Jaski, you know, we all heard that, you know, the SIDBI is doing what you guys are doing. So is there a possibility of, you know, bringing collaboration between institutions together, so that, you know, whatever resources and knowledge that we are building,